you limit it with how much you can grow if that's the only reason you do it. And he started seeing a certain pattern, and I think it's 13 principles that he came up with a book about how successful people operate.
So there's actually a tool that found to be very successful in helping people to clarify that definite purpose, or as you say, clarifying the why. Are you familiar with the Toyota 5 Whys? Have you heard of that?
Get Gel, the wisdom for your well.
Welcome back, Reb Sholom. Wow, it was a long time. Good to see you back again.
Yes, it's fantastic to see you.
So I want to focus. I think today let's go into the book Think and Grow Rich. It's a best-selling book, even though the author is a long time ago gone, but it's still a best-selling book, and it's like the foundation for success for a lot of successful people. I'm fascinated when I go around. I see people. I met a dentist, for example, a very successful dentist. He has different dental practices, dental offices. And he told me everything started by him reading The Science of Getting Rich, which is basically in the same family as the Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. So I think we should spend some time. I don't think I'm doing any justice if we're gonna speak about it only in one episode. I think we should be spread out in between a few episodes.
Agreed. And I also just think one of the reasons why I think been such a long time bestseller is because he was really at the beginning of the movement where began to see the whole positivity movement being included into the business realm. So there's so many different applications. People who may not even be in business are still reading this book because of just the personal development aspect of it. It really was at the beginning where it kicked off this whole kind of positive psychology and positive thinking movement that has, really taken over the market. And he laid down a lot of the basics and the fundamentals of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we can start if you want by talking about the foundation of the book, or we can jump into the content. I think it's just important to understand that the whole book came about, and again, as you said, Shulam, it was in the beginning when not many people were talking about this,
Right.
and the formula for success. You think about very, very outlier successful people back then, and everybody thought it's like, I don't know if it's a muzzle or they're different type of people or whatever. But what what Napoleon Hill tried to do, and he was commissioned by Dale Carnegie to do it, is to analyze successful people, and he opened the doors for him for to meet the wealthiest people of the generation,
Hmm.
analyze them, see what they're doing, and create the principles of success. How can everybody else copy what they're doing? And he only not only did that, but he also interviewed many people who didn't make it, which I'm sure it was much easier for him to get in touch with them. And
Right.
he interviewed them also, and he started seeing a certain pattern. And I think it's 13 principles that he came up with the book about how successful people operate. And I tell you what, when I'm looking at it, it's fascinating. The packaging, he packaged it so well. But between you and me, a lot of that is also in the Lahavdil, the Torah, especially I think in Pirkei Avos, you can see a lot of it. But for some reason, most people don't associate so much financial success with what they see in the Torah. They think, oh, what I see in the Torah is only my ruchnius. Financial success, I have to go look somewhere else. But it's not true. You can find every ingredient for success in Chazal, in the Torah and Chazal. You just have to have
Yeah.
the proper perspective to be objective that you're looking for Gashmias also, which in Ayit's Leben, in Ayit's life, Gashmias and Ruchnias is the same thing.
I think it's worth spending time on just this point before we go any further, Chaim, because what you're touching on is so crucial to the whole purpose of this podcast. You know, we we don't realize, like you said, that all these things, all the new chidushim that are coming out in the personal development books and the business success books, they're all touching on Yiddishkeit 101. You know, we have a Messiah that all these Yesaitis that are talked about in these books, which all boil, they boil down to relatively similar foundations, and that touches on remaining hopeful, remaining resilient, being optimistic, being confident. All these things are core to Yiddishkeit. And it's not just the Rebbe's drasha, or like you said, or in Turkey Avos. It's We're surrounded by it. You know, every day when we make brachas, and we thank the Rebbeinu Shalom consistently throughout the day, we are actually, now today there's a whole study in gratitude and the power of saying thank you, and being grateful and having gratitude. They're studying it now and seeing in neuroscience that our brains can actually, we can change the patterns of our brains if we are more, if we are grateful people. Okay, if we're more positive thinking, we can actually change the way our brains function, and um, we can lower our stress levels. We can lower blood pressure. All these things, they're just studying it now. Neuroscience has become a huge area of research. But what's really, really insightful and that you're touching on is that this is things that we're surrounded by since the inception of Klal Yisrael, and since Kabbalah Satira, and from the Avos already. This is Yiddishkeit, and I think it's a repackaging. So when we discuss these books, it's being expressed in ways that might resonate more with us. But we have to realize that we everything that's discussed in these books, we're surrounded by it in our daily in our daily activities, in davening, in Shabbos, in Yom Tov, everything we do, we're surrounded. And if we just take these ideas from these books and realize that we can tap into it by perhaps paying a bit more attention to what we're saying when we're davening or saying brachas, or anything else, we're actively, are already actively practicing these things. So, we're fortunate that we have that built in to our daily routine, and it's just a matter of shifting perspective to be able to tap into it and really be able to take advantage of it, and reach the success in all areas that these books talk about.
Yeah. Was that a statement or a question?
It's a response to what you're saying.
Absolutely.
And just that I think it's so important
Absolutely.
as we move forward in these podcasts and the discussions that we're having. Just
Absolutely.
that, to remember that we have it at the tips of our fingers. We really are very fortunate. We already have it built in. We just have to
Right.
pay a bit more attention.
Right. But I do think that in the books that we're discussing, it's more organized towards business success, financial success, and that's why people go to that place. But definitely in the Torah, you have the same thing. So
Right.
let's start with the first principle of success, which Napoleon Hill calls definiteness of purpose. You
Right.
have a definite purpose. Why are you doing what you're doing? Unfortunately, most people who do anything, they're not so definite with why they do it. You ask somebody, why do you do this? Why is this your business? Why is this your occupation? He will tell you, this is how I make money. Now, which is totally fine. I'm not saying it's not fine. Everybody needs parnusa, and you do something that gives you a nice parnusa, and it's ilach, it's not, you're not stealing, then it's beautiful. But you're limited with how much you can grow if that's the only reason you do it. But
Right.
if you have a bigger purpose, why you do it, you basically have unlimited potential. And I can
Okay.
elaborate a lot about that, but let me first hear what you say on that.
Well, I think, what does the term definiteness of purpose even mean? And, I think Napoleon Hill explains that means you have to have a very clearly defined goal in mind, but setting goals have to be ones that resonate with you. They have to be personal. They have to be something meaningful. And when he says, and not as opposed to just a dream, that means that, the first step is knowing yourself. and having self-awareness about what really is important to you, what matters to you, and not just because everybody else is doing it or because that looks like really exciting or and it would always be nice to have a really fancy watch, but is that really what your goal is? Is that what's purposeful to you? If it is, then by all means set that as a goal. But not everybody is thinks like that, and you have to be self-aware enough to know that when I have in mind a certain place I want to be or a certain person I want to be, um, it has to be honest and it has to be true to yourself. Is that really what you envision? And envisioning is a big part of setting that goal. Imagine yourself where you would like to be. What does that look like? What does that feel like? And is that really what resonates? Is that really what you're about? If it is, then I think you're on the right path of creating that definiteness of purpose. But included in setting that goal is having that real, putting the time into having that self-awareness.
Yeah. Yeah, everything you said is right. The only thing is that if you look at, let's say, business, okay, for example, especially nowadays, we have so much opportunity. What do you can do so many things and be successful with all of them. How do
Hmm.
you choose what you want to do? And more important, how do you choose what not to do, what not to focus on? So
Right,
you're talking about having a job, having a business. If you're an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter what area of expertise you have or what business you want to go into. Most people are drifting to what's known now to be successful or whatever. And when you do something with a definiteness of purpose, you are so clear because every decision that you have to make, you filter it by your purpose. Is this
right,
gonna bring me closer to my purpose, or is it gonna take me further away from my purpose? I
right,
have to tell you, Shulam, I was lucky and privileged to be a student of Bob Proctor.
right.
Bob Proctor was one, he passed away a few years ago, and he was very big in personal development. He lived and breathes the concept of Napoleon Hill, the concept of the law of attraction, of the mindset. He read every day for, I don't know, 50, 60 years. He read every day Think and Grow Rich.
Hmm.
And he was talking about that all the time. And he knew it by heart. I came to Bob a few years before he passed away, and I offered him a certain opportunity that it made a lot of sense to me. Now, I don't know if it made sense to Bob or it didn't make sense to Bob, but the calmness that you saw in this person was like crazy.
Hmm.
I jumped from my skin when I saw him sitting with such a calmness, and you could think that this guy doesn't have what to do with it at this time. He had a big company, 80 employees, and he was always involved in different projects. And I came to him presenting an opportunity, and he told me after thinking 2 minutes, I remember he was sitting like this. No, it's not interesting. That's it. And I felt like, whoa, give me a chance, give me an objection that I can handle.
Right.
I couldn't even handle it. I didn't know how to handle it. And then I realized because this guy was so definite with his purpose, he knew exactly what he
Right.
wanted. And I'm bringing it as an example because I'm looking back. I have to be honest here, and I'm tell you that a lot of the things in my life or in my business that doesn't work out so well, when I look back after it didn't work out, I can usually relate it of the lack of definiteness of purpose.
Hmm.
I didn't know exactly what I want.
Okay.
And that was the reason that I allowed myself by myself or with the influence of others to be drifted away into something that could be a wonderful idea, but because it's not in line with my definiteness of purpose, it it didn't succeed.
Right. Fair
Um,
enough.
I tell you another thing also that Bob told me that people think that definiteness of purpose means that you need to do for a living something that you feel called to do, like you have a purpose of doing it. It's not always the case. If you have a business that can make you a beautiful, beautiful income, and it's not in line with your purpose, but it is in line that you make that income in order to be able to do something else with the income that is in line with the purpose, like building a school or being involved in certain charities or helping certain family members, whatever it is. As long as you align, you attach the thing that you do to generate income together with your definiteness of purpose, what you really want, and you align the two, you attach the two together, the sky is the limit.
100%. I think you're setting a goal, can mean that I want to be someplace, or I want to build something, or I want to have accomplished something. If in order to get there, you have to do other things that may not fall in line with your ideal uh, situation, or even job or business. But as long as the focus is that this is just the means to the end, that in of itself will create the what Napoleon refers to as the desire you have to have. If you're passionate about building that school, but in order to do that, you have to create a business of selling, envelopes, which may not have been something that you always imagined doing, but it's going to be the means to get to building that school. Then I think you'll become very passionate about building the business of envelopes, because your focus is to get to the school. But if you lose track, and you end up thinking that my entire purpose is now shifted to building envelopes, then you're right. You'll lose that desire. You lose that passion, and you may end up not staying on track to what your ultimate goal is. But I think they go hand in hand, and I think those are two core concepts that Napoleon Hill speaks about, which is it's not just about having a goal, but ensuring that you have that desire, that passion to reach that goal, and you recognize that there's going to be steps involved to get there.
Correct. I think Simon Sinek is very famous for saying, "What's your why?
Right.
What's your why? Why do you do it?" I think this is a very powerful question. What's your why? Why do you do it? So somebody comes to you, I want to be successful. I want to whatever. I want to this. I want that. Why? Why do you want it? And the answer cannot be because I want to make money. Because then the question
Right.
is, why do you want to make money? Ah, you want to support your family. So why do you want to do this to support your family? Why not something else? You always have to be digging in. Why? Why this? Why now? Why this way? And when you keep asking this question, and I think I once heard from Napoleon also on one of his recordings. By the way, there's a certain certification. It's called the Napoleon Hill Foundation Coaching Certification, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm.
I went through like 3/4 of the process to become a certified Napoleon Hill coach. Maybe I'll finish it one day. But I heard so much. I read, I had to read a lot, and I had to watch a lot of videos from Napoleon Hill, and
Mm-hmm.
it's fascinating. It's fascinating. So, who said so? How do you know that to be true? It's one of the very, very powerful questions that can help a person a lot.
Right.
How do you know? I can't. How do you know you can? Maybe you can. Like
Right.
you speak to somebody. So I speak to you, Shulam. You want something in your life. Why do you want it? What's your definiteness of purpose? If you have a definiteness of purpose, then we're gonna find a way. If you don't have the definiteness of purpose, you might as well not want it.
Right. So there's actually a tool that has found to be very successful in helping people to clarify that definite purpose, or as you say, clarifying the why. Are you familiar with the Toyota 5 Whys? Have you heard of that?
No, that sounds like such a fancy name. How do they even
Yeah,
pronounce it?
it's the Toyota 5 Whys. It comes from the Toyota
Toyota
company,
is
and
like the car Toyota?
the car, yeah. And if I mean, I don't know all the history, but from what I understand, it occurred once in a board meeting where, the whoever was leading the meeting says, okay, what's the next project that we're going to embark on? And so we said, oh, well, we'll build this type of car. So the first question was, well, why? Why is that important? So, well, it's going to do this and that. He said, well, why is that important? And they asked the question 5 times, and they really broke down the essence of why this particular product was going to be the next big one, and why, and it I don't know exactly the whole history, but it got studied, asking why 5 times and constantly breaking it down even more and more. They discovered that asking why more than 5 times, an adult doesn't process further than that. A child can ask why 20 times and never give up. But in an adult, after you hit the fifth why, you've kind of reached the limit. But by that stage, and you've actually broken down your answers, you can go back and identify throughout that process what key words or phrases really stick out to you. And those they've discovered are really the essence of your why, of what's important to you by going through that process. And it's been studied and it's been found to be accurate. So it's a really easy tool, but when you take it seriously, it can be quite draining.
Interesting. I'm
But
just
it's a
thinking.
fascinating.
I'm just
Yeah.
thinking that if you have a definiteness of purpose, if the limit is also 5, or maybe it's only if you don't have a definiteness of purpose. I don't know.
I don't know, but I think it's just it's a clever tool that oftentimes we get stuck. Like, how do I identify this? How do I do this? But the answer is, if we push ourselves, hard enough, we will eventually get there, and we'll end up using terms and words that are an expression of what we're thinking. And
Interesting.
and if you follow this process properly and you actually write down those different thoughts that come to your mind, when you look back at that chart that you created, you'll see right in front of you the things that really stick out. You'll have 3 to 5 words or phrases that really talk to you. That's my why. That's what it's about. And they've discovered that it works, in business, it works in personal. It's just a method that our minds can process and help us to get to discovering this purpose that we're talking about.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I want to ask
but
a question. I'm not sure I'm allowed to ask such a question in public.
Mm.
If I'm not, let me know, and I don't know, I'll ask somebody to cut it out. How many times are you able to ask your wife why?
That's a trick
You don't have
question.
to answer. You don't have to
That's a
answer. I
trick
can see
question
it's a
because,
sensitive question.
well, no, it's not sensitive. It's a hard question for me to answer. I mean, I've been married to my wife now for 32 years. We've developed a certain kind of mode of communication where we kind of understand each other without having to push too hard.
Right.
We
I don't ask you why, you don't ask me why, and finish.
yeah, we kind of understand. There's like a lot of context that's 32 years worth of built upon.
It's like an
So
AI model.
that's a bit of a difficult question to answer. But having said that, in a workplace, if I'm working with one of my direct reports and I'm giving them a specific task, and I'll encourage them. I want them to ask why, because I want them to really understand
The
what they're
project.
doing and how they're going to and help them to facilitate that process of them understanding the importance of it, because I really want them to be successful at performing that task.
I, wa-
You know,
I was just hoping you're not gonna ask me back the question. That's okay. So continue. As long as you don't, as long as you
yeah.
go a different path, I'm
No,
okay.
I thought you wouldn't want me to throw it back. But
Yeah.
I,
Yeah, you don't want to take Nicole. I understand. Okay.
but I do want to just point out that we touched on this before, and I think it's so important to this discussion that you know having definiteness of purpose, of course, is crucial, and that's like one of the major themes of Napoleon Hill's work. But just as important is that power of desire, of the passion, of being motivated. We don't give enough um, importance to ensuring that our motivations and our passion is aligned with our goals. In other words, we may have an idea in our mind of where we want to be and what success looks like to us, but are we really passionate about that? Is that something I'm really motivated by, that vision of what I imagine success looks like? And if you can say honestly, yes, I'm really motivated and passionate about that, then I think, yeah, you have a very good chance of reaching that. But if your motivation slash passion is not aligned with that goal, you're going to have a real challenge getting there. You know,
Absolutely, but it goes hand by hand. How can I be motivated if it's not a definite purpose?
well,
And I
that,
believe it's down the road. I think we're gonna get more to desire also, but I think it's hand by hand.
yeah, yeah, but I'm pointing out because that's where the self-awareness comes in that I mentioned before. You know, we just a whole part of this whole method that Napoleon Hill talks about is it boils down to being honest with yourself. You know, you really have to be, you know, you really when you clarify your purpose, are you really being honest? Is that really what's important to you? Is
Is
that
that
really
what
what's
you
meaningful?
want, or is that what your friend wants, your wife wants?
Or is that what, you know, is that what the community the
Right.
culture has suggested is important? You know, and it could very well be, like I said, you know, there's nothing wrong if your goal happens to match what is the standard or what, you know, what is considered success. That's great, but maybe it doesn't. And it's just really
Be
important
honest,
that
absolutely. And it's
you have to be
very
totally
hard.
honest with yourself.
It's very hard.
Oh,
It's very,
yes,
very hard. And I tell you this, I think you have to be flexible. You know, in the beginning, could be you're gonna think this is really what I want, and then you work with it for a little bit to see it's not. You
right,
have to, don't be hard on yourself. But
right,
if you find, I think this is the key point, that if you find your definiteness of purpose, is you found gold.
right,
And the more you
absolutely,
know it, and you work, your entire energy should be spent after you find it to not let anything else get in the way. Just be
right,
focused. This is what I want. I know why I want it. This is my purpose. Anything else, sorry, let it go.
right, right.
Should we finish here for now?
We could do.
Let's finish here and then let's come back next week with another principle.
Okay, sounds fantastic. Looking
Atzloch
forward.
Rab Shulam. It was very good speaking to
Okay.
you.
Kal Tov, Reb Chaim.
Get Jill the wisdom for your will. Get Jill the wisdom for your will.